It's You by San, Wooyoung, and Yeosang of the K-pop group ATEEZ is a song that expresses desire sensually, intensely, and with some sincere devotion towards loving freely and strongly in the lyrics. So why does the music video feel so sad and restricted? I'm going to show you a deep dive into some of the editing techniques, visual motifs, and just general choices that give this music video such a wonderful, beautiful contrast to the song itself. And at the very end, I'll tie it all together into my interpretation of it. And real quick, hi, I'm Reese. I'm an ATEEZ who posts a lot on TikTok and plans YouTube videos when she probably should be focusing on her actual job as a promotional producer. AKA, I write, direct, film, and edit commercials every day, so I know a bit about what I'm talking about. Though editing commercials is different from editing music videos, but there is some overlap, which is what I'll be speaking to. We'll start off with the editing techniques that they used. Overall, I find it pretty interesting how they chose to use such jarring quick cuts and color inversions in a song that leans more towards sensual R&B. So what's a cut in terms of video editing? It's basically any time the visual on screen changes. It could be a simple cut to a different scene, like the example here, where we instantly go from Yeosang in the classroom desk area to Yeosang dancing in the alley. Or what they use pretty frequently and stylistically are jump cuts, like the example here. Jump cuts add a sense of urgency to a scene, which otherwise wouldn't have it. In this case, him simply looking around was edited with jump cuts in a way that makes it seem more frantic and a little bit more jarring. Not to mention the motion blur that they added on him, which adds to the disoriented feel of it. I'll also add that most music videos include jump cuts because music videos don't have the allotted time that, say, a motion picture does in order to create a narrative and push forth a story. So most music videos cut scenes pretty quickly in order to continue the momentum of the song. However, I will say that it was used very stylistically in this music video. And there's actually one specific scene that I really want to point out the editing style that they used, which is Yeosang in front of the record shop. Here, the camera stays still and it cuts between Yeosang standing and dancing in front of the shop, people being in the window of the recording shop, and Yeosang being in front of the people dancing in the recording shop. And the light is flickering to kind of add a whole nother dimension to it as well. So let's break down that scene really quick. We go from a dance scene with everybody in front of the record shop to a few frames of the dancers in the record shop with the light on, back to the group dance, back to the dancers in the shop with the light flickering off, to flashes of Yeosang being there, to him not being there, to him being there. Then the lights off, no one in the store, and Yeosang dancing, then a different angle with all of the dancers there. And that all happens within 2 seconds. This type of editing just reiterates the urgency and the type of energy that they're creating with the editing of the music video. And if you want to see an editor mistake, which is not really a mistake, it's just something that an editor would notice, from that scene, you can go ahead and watch the TikTok linked in my description, and I'll show you what it is. And the flashing of the lights that we saw in that record shop actually continues on a theme that we see throughout the music video. There are lights in the background of a couple different shots that are flickering, such as this scene here where the window lights are flickering. Here we see the street lamp flickering, and we see street lamps again flickering. There are also moments where lights that are focused on the members themselves flicker, like the instance of San in the cage and the Wooyoung dancing scene. There are also some edited in flickers of color inversion as well as flash frames, such as the example here where we see San's scene flickering from typical lighting to a more red lighting. Then here we have the scene of Wooyoung reaching towards the camera. And in this scene, within 1 singular second, it flickers between red, inverted color, and sepia, all within 1 second. And here we also see the inversion of the hands that are reaching towards San, and this is an example of edited in flickering. Now, these flickering lights and images convey 2 different things to me. 1, flickering lights are pretty common in horror movies and thriller movies because they create a sense of unease, tension, and fear, which again is a pretty surprising contrast given that it's a song about passion and a proclamation towards a desire to love freely, which doesn't really scream fear to me, but maybe sexual tension. And the second thing, the flickers to a red color scheme lean into the love, passion, and lust that we see paralleled in the lyrics of the song. And the flickers to inverted colors serve to create a kind of visual stimulation of a quick diversion for what you expect the next scene to look like, which makes watching it pretty exciting. Now, those were just some of the general editing techniques and patterns that I saw in the music video. Now let's jump into the visual motifs, which, in case you didn't know, a motif is a repeated narrative element that supports the theme of a story. So in this music video, we see several instances of things that fly, like the plane here, which is referenced in the lyrics too, birds here, and Ooyoung, apparently. Which I take all of these references to things that fly as an allusion to the desire to love freely and passionately as referenced in some of the lyrics, such as a world of our own without any interference and no boundaries to the dream. You can also delve deeper into the fact that San is kind of paralleling a trapped bird, which I'll delve into in a little bit about my theory behind that, but let's go on to some more visual motifs. There's also several instances of glass breaking or shattering. For example, the puddle here, which I will dive far deeper into, no pun intended, in the interpretation portion of the video. And we have the art storm scene that you see here, which I don't have a better name for it. And this one I take as a moment of clarity in an otherwise blurry music video. The art storm scene looks like watercolor to me, and there's even moments where everyone's faces are smeared, like you can see here. And when the glass breaks, the watercolor storm background disappears and the blurriness fades, kind of like an illusion broke. Another visual motif is reaching towards the camera, like you can see Ooyoung doing here, San doing here, and Yeosang doing here. And I think that's honestly just a gesture towards yearning, which is essentially what the song is primarily about. So I don't think there's too much more that you can delve into with that, but it's just something that I noticed. Another visual motif, and this one leans more into the dancing and their body than the editing style. So maybe this falls into the director portion of it, is the free arms that we see several times in the music video. And again, I don't have a better name for that. I just feel like that's the free arms. So we have Yeosang doing it right before the airplane comes in and hits him. And we have San doing it right before the hands come in. And one thing that I kind of noticed is that the free gesture occurs right before something bad happens, aka a plane crashes into Yeosang and the hands reach towards San. So read into that what you will, but that is just something that I noticed. So those are just some of the visual motifs that I noticed. There are likely plenty more that you can read into, which if you do notice more and you want to point out, feel free to comment them down below. But now we're gonna head into the general choices that I noticed in the music video. Now I also noticed a really interesting color contrast and use of color with the colors red and black and blue and white. We'll start off with blue and white. So the beginning half of the music video, they are wearing white outfits with blue accents, and much of the colors are lighter and brighter, which blue is seen as a color that represents isolation, passivity, and calmness, whereas white typically represents innocence and purity. Then towards the end of the music video, we see a shift of the color scheme towards red and black. Many of the scenes have been edited with a red overlay. They have the red background while they are performing in black outfits. And the coloring behind that red tends to lead to passion, like I mentioned earlier, as well as power and danger. And black is the opposite of white. So therefore, if white stands for pureness, black stands for impureness, which make of that what you will. But again, it's just some things that I noticed, and you can find symbolism in different ways with it. There's also a couple pretty cool transitions that I just want to point out. We have the tornado airplane storm transition that goes from Yeosang to San. We have the birds flying out of the cage transition, and Ooyoung's sideways reach towards San's bird cage, which I just found you didn't expect it to happen. None of those transitions you expected to happen. And so again, it kind of lends itself to the jarringness of the music video. Now onto my interpretation of all of this, and a small disclaimer. Music videos and stories in general, any type of creative content that doesn't explicitly lay out what the meaning is, can be interpreted in many different ways. If you see the interpretation as I see it, wonderful. If you don't, we have different interpretations of it, and that is the glory of creative endeavors. Here, onto my interpretation. So starting off, we zoom into Ooyoung's eye, which leads me to think that much of this story is taking place in the mind's eye, and it's symbolic of going inside of the brain. And it's likely a metaphor for something greater, not all just what you see, like most music videos are. Now, where I'm a little bit confused is the scenes with them in regular clothes dancing in the alley seems like the closest thing to reality that we see in the music video, aside from the very beginning with Ooyoung. Because they're basically just dudes dancing their hearts out and just, body rolling on wet ground. So that could be reality, or that could also be a part of the dreamscape part of my theory. I'm not sure about that one. Now onto each solo cutscene. I think each one of the solo cutscenes represents something that's in the way of them reaching the you of its you. So the thing that they're yearning for. Like for instance, Ooyoung's scene. He's alone in a blurry, hazy existence, and sometimes with people watching him or looming over him. So I take that as maybe he's being emotionally prevented, that scene is more a representation of the emotions that he's feeling inside of him as he's trying to reach the you of its you. So he's emotionally prevented from pursuing the you. Next up, Yosang's scenes. And in his scenes, he's alone, but not quite alone because there's several different versions of himself. So I take this as maybe he's mentally prevented. And I lean into the mental aspect of it because it's a classroom, and classroom is typically a way of learning mentally, like you train your brain. So that's why I'm leaning towards mental for his interpretation. So perhaps the thing that is preventing him from pursuing the you of its you is many different thoughts and versions of himself. So he is mentally prevented from pursuing the you of its you. Now San, his I feel like is the most obvious. He's trapped in a bird cage where he is constantly being watched, and he's also surrounded by hands that are reaching for him. Which, if you'll notice, he's also surrounded by crows at one point, which crows symbolize mystery, foreshadowing, doom, and anger. So I take this as there is a physical or external thing that is preventing him from pursuing the you of its you. Like perhaps the expectations of those around him are preventing him from pursuing the you of its you. Or the constant eyes watching him are preventing him from freely being able to pursue the you of its you. So do you remember earlier how I mentioned the reflection of San in the bird cage that's on the puddle? We're gonna delve into that now. So typically in a lot of film, reflections and mirrors are just that, a reflection. They show the inner struggle, the true struggle. You can't hide anything from a mirror. So if we're going into the thought where them dancing in the alleyway is reality and all of these other cutscenes are the more internal, mental, psyche version of everything, it could be interpreted that the reflection that we see there of San in the birdcage while he is actively out and dancing is a true reflection and juxtaposition of what he's feeling mentally and internally and what he is doing externally. In one instance, he's trapped, and in the other, he is out and dancing with others. Which, if you recall, the reflection that we see there shatters later in the music video. You can make of that what you will, but I interpret that as finally breaking free. Which, yes, I have worded everything in this interpretation very loosely, but also queer-coded because I do find a lot of this music video to parallel queer experiences, which is my interpretation of it. Don't be homophobic. And to continue on with my interpretation and my theory behind the music video, the two scenes of them in the black outfits, one of which being with the red background when they're dancing and the other being the storm watercolor background, seem to be more of them overcoming what's been preventing them from pursuing the you. And which again, we see the shattering happen there. So maybe that is shattering the predisposed belief that they have something preventing them from pursuing. And at the end, they quite literally Thanos snap and dissolve away, which could allude to them waking up in reality once again. So yeah, this was my in-depth analysis of the editing and stylistic choices of the It's You music video, because I really enjoyed the stylistic editing choices and just the general vibe of it. Like I mentioned earlier, since most music videos are so short and artsy-fartsy, there are many ways that you can interpret them. I shared my interpretation of it, and I would love to hear your guys' interpretation as well. So please feel free to comment and share your thoughts. And if you like this type of analysis of editing and info dumping on things that I've picked up from my job, and love of finding meaning in things that might not actually have meaning, although in film and videography, most details have meaning. There's intent behind almost everything. Let me know. I'm happy to delve into more stuff like this. I really do enjoy editing. I try to do more of a professional type setup and edit this in a slightly different style than my reactions because I'm trying to lean into more, hey, I'm kind of a professional. But yeah, so with that, I hope you have a great day / night / whatever time it is where you are. Drink some water and be a good human being.